Hello, this is Linda, and we're here with our podcast. And I'm really happy to have you meet my guest today, Caroline Ciocca. And we go way back, not too long because we're not that old, all right? but we knew each other from in Las Vegas, and now we're both on the Eastern. Well, I'm in the Midwest, she's more on the Eastern. She's in Georgia, and I'm in Kansas City. So we haven't seen each other for years, and she still looks young. I'm all gray, but I don't know. I
You
guess
look great, Linda.
maybe I should have moved to Georgia. Maybe that's where all the gray hair disappears. I don't know. But Caroline, when I knew her, was involved at working for nonprofit organizations, and now she has her own business consulting and coaching, mostly with nonprofits, but I understand some others too. So Caroline, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what inspired you to start your own business? I probably have a good idea because I have a feeling it's similar to mine, but my path, but let's hear your story.
Yeah, so I spent 25 years in the nonprofit world, in and around it. So some of my opportunities were leading nonprofits, and then I was in the corporate sector for a little bit. So I feel like I have a really good holistic view of the sector and participating as a board member, working, with board members and donors and being a donor and all that good stuff. So when I moved to Georgia, I decided I wanted to maybe try something new, and an opportunity to start consulting was presented. And when those opportunities show up, you just got to go with it and see where it leads. And so now, about 3.5 years later, I've got several clients, and I love that I get to impact several organizations now and not just one.
Great. That's partly why I started in consulting also. I felt like I had such a wider reach, and I just met such interesting people. Not that you don't meet interesting people when you're working in the sector as an employee, but you get to meet so many more when you're
Yeah.
and I wanted to ask you, this is probably a really simple, basic question, but maybe a lot of people don't understand the difference between consulting and coaching. So, can you tell us, are there differences, similarities? How do you
Yeah.
distinguish whether a person needs a consultant or a coach?
Well, sometimes they need both, and sometimes there's crossover between the two. But I think for my work, the difference is on the consulting side, I really dig into the operations of the organization. We focus on people, planning, and processes. Do you have the right people in place? Are you trying to expand? And do you have the right roles identified? And then planning is all about having a strategic plan, and it doesn't have to be a 5-year plan. It could be a 1-year plan. So really understanding what their planning needs are. But most organizations don't have a plan, and they just wing it every day. And that is very challenging when you are trying to get to a certain place with the organization. So I'm a big believer in having a plan. And then processes are really the kind of the new reassurance, because people leave organizations and everything, if it's all in their heads, then it's difficult to make the transition. And people should be able to go on vacation and not be tied to a position, but every company should really understand and have documented at least their 10 key processes, the things that make the organization function, like payroll. It shouldn't be dependent on one person being able to do that. And so I try to work with my clients to help them identify what those key processes are, and then, get them documented. Nobody likes doing it. It's a tedious thing to do, but when you set the vision for what that will do for the organization and the relief it'll provide, then it really does matter. And so that's the consulting side of my business. So I'm much more into the operations. On the coaching side, it's supporting leaders in an environment that sometimes feels very lonely, being a sounding board, and having a safe place where they can talk about anything and not feel like they're going to be judged or incompetent. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. And so just being able to have somebody talk through whatever challenges or even ideas, even opportunities, is really great to, just have that resource. And, in the nonprofit world, you don't always want to go to your board, and you shouldn't always go to your board. Sometimes you want to process things before you get there. And so I always, as a nonprofit leader, I had really great people in my life that I could use as a sounding board, but not everybody has that. And so that's really where a coach comes into play, to just be a place where you can get a lot of clarity through conversation.
I think that's really a great idea. And I have not ever done really coaching, although I have done some writing coaching. I recently was going to ask to be a co-author of a book. And as we started the book, I said, you know, Justin, this is really your book. I don't think I should be the co-author. I think you should be the author. So he said, well, I'm going to still list you in the book because you're my writing coach.
Oh, there you
And I
go.
did coach him and I helped do some of the writing for him. But I
Yeah.
think coaching is a whole different thing. It just like it's different for me than writing a book of my own. Coaching someone else is
Yeah.
in some ways more challenging for me
Well,
anyway.
it is because you have to, my natural tendency is to jump in and fix it and jump in and have the solution. And with coaching, you have to ask the right questions and help them get to their own answer,
Right.
with guidance. And so I agree with you. It's a little bit more difficult. Consulting, you can kind of get in there, roll up your sleeves, come up with ideas and help on the execution.
Mhm.
So they are very different, but there's lots of crossover. And the more I consult with an organization, the more I understand where their strengths are, where their challenges are, and it just becomes stronger and stronger as far as the relationship goes. So I'm a big believer in, hanging on for a longer period of time instead of just coming in and, trying to fix everything in a 30-day period or, 6-month period.
And I know you told me that you help people kind of get some clarity on what are their strengths and what are their limitations and what are their values. And I think that self-awareness is really something that sometimes you, as a consultant, you don't get to do, but as a coach,
Yeah.
sounds really fascinating. So tell us a little bit more about that. Why is it so important for people to have that awareness?
Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. One, when you understand where your strengths are, your zone of genius is, then you can build the confidence that's needed and you can lean into those strengths more than trying to fix what's a weakness. And so, it's all about confidence, and everybody struggles in this work world where we have to be everything. We have to be the jack of all trades. This is huge in the nonprofit sector, right? You got to do more with less, which means I got to be the accountant and I got to be the CEO and I got to be, it's just not how humans are designed. And so when you really have an opportunity to learn about who you are, you can start to get clarity and then really lean into those strengths, but also understand where your limitations are. Because if you're blinded by that, that could be challenging for, when you're working on with teams, or you're trying to do something that is going to take a tremendous amount of energy when it's better if you just outsource it or find a team member that can do it better than you. So it's all about how you're using your energy at work. So you're not walking away at the end of the day and you're totally depleted because you've spent 80% of your time trying to do something that you're not good at. And then the other side of self-awareness is really how your style impacts other people. And when you're working in a team environment, you really have to have understanding that we're not all built the same way. We're not wired the same. And I use DISC as a kind of a foundational tool that really helps people understand a couple of things about their style, what their pace is. So some people are really fast paced. Some people are slower paced. If you really have just that understanding, it could be a game changer for your team, because the fast paced people don't understand why the slower people are not doing things as quickly as they would. And then vice versa, right? So if you just focus on that alone, it really kind of lifts this veil of, maybe almost judging other people because they're not like us. But instead, you get to lean into other people because they're not like us.
Right.
And I think that is really, really important, just not only in your work life, but also in your personal life, how you show up, what you know about yourself, and then how you interact and impact other people.
That I think is very true, that it's also true in your personal life. After 59 years of being married before my husband passed away, I realized very early on in my marriage that I was a type A personality and he was he once told somebody at our church that they were telling him to hurry up and do something. He said, I have two speeds, slow and reverse. And I thought, well, that's perfect because I have one speed, fast.
But you both knew, you both understood each
Right.
other. And I think opposites can attract if you're not triggered by each other, right?
Right.
If you're trying to change him and make him a fast-paced person, well, you guys are in for a long road and you probably wouldn't have been married for
No,
59
we
years,
certainly wouldn't have.
right?
But I
Yeah.
think, it can also hold true in the work environment. And I recognize that when I started my business, and probably you did too, that there were areas that I was weak in. So if I was going to hire somebody, I'd hire somebody with strengths in that area because I knew that wasn't my strength. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I've
so,
always loved
yeah,
assessments because I think it's a great source of information. It's not designed to put you in a box and limit you, but it gives you a jumping off point. And the first time I used DISC was when I was at Make-A-Wish, and it was eye-opening because we had a leadership team of 4 people. 3 of us were fast-paced, one was slow-paced. And we couldn't understand why in the moment she wasn't like there with us. And when we got that clarity, it changed everything. And we had a better understanding. We gave her the space to take the time she needed, but she also ramped up when she needed to ramp up for certain occasions. So everybody made minor adjustments to work better as a team. And ever since then, I mean, that was my real life experience that said these assessments matter. They really can give you a peek into other people, into yourself. And we need to continue to do that work all the time. I'm not the same person I was in my 30s that I am now in my 50s. And so every decade, it has, you change a little, your experience changes you a little. So having some kind of way to really kind of understand who you are, I think is really important. And so it's the foundation of my coaching practice for sure.
great. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about DISC. I've been familiar with it. I think we've probably most of us have reached a point where we've done the Myers-Briggs, we've done the
Mhm.
Enneagram, we've done,
Oh,
all
there's so
these different
many.
assessment tools. You mentioned one though that I was not familiar with, and that's 12 driving forces. So can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that and
Yeah.
DISC and how those tools work? Most people are probably familiar with one of them, but maybe not with all of them.
Yeah. So there's a few different versions of disc that are out there. I chose to work with TTI, and they have several different types of assessments. But what I really appreciate about them is that they invest significantly in brain science. So they're constantly researching the brain to make sure that the assessments are valid. And so they're putting the devices on their heads and using different words and different experiences to understand how the brain works. So it's really important for anybody that uses these assessments is just to make sure that they're valid. And there's a lot of them out there, but not all of them are valid. So I use TTI, and there's 2 assessments that I use. One is DISC and one is 12 driving forces, and they kind of work hand in hand but they're very different. DISC is all about your behaviors. So they are observable behaviors, how you do what you do. So your tone of voice, the words you use, the pace, your body language, all of that is observable behaviors. And it really helps you lean into understanding your strengths, your areas of weakness, your blind spots. But what the assessment is not, it's not a measurement of your intelligence. It's not a measurement of your skill sets, and it's definitely not a personality test. So a lot of times people think they're personalities, and it's not. This is how you do what you do. And if you think of an iceberg, the DISC assessment is the part of the iceberg that you can see that is above the water. Then you go into 12 driving forces, which are your motivators, and that's what's below the surface. So
Ah,
they are hidden and deeply personal. So what motivates you? What is your why? What gets you out of bed every morning and gets you excited about going to work or doing what you do? And there's 8 categories, and I won't go into all the details, but it does help, especially from a work perspective. If your motivators are not being met and you're not nurturing them, that's where the disengagement comes into play. So it's important to understand how they do what they do. Are their skill sets aligned with the job? And then what motivates them? And is the organization that they're with really kind of firing up those motivators?
Mhm. You mentioned TTI. You want to explain that because that terminology was unfamiliar
Oh,
to
that's
me.
the
So,
yeah, that's the company that
oh,
that has all the assessments. It's Talent Insights. Yeah.
oh, okay, great. Well, and I know you also have a workshop which sounds like it's related to all this. I believe it's called The Power of Knowing You and Your Team, which I think
Yes.
everybody should probably be interested in. So tell us a little bit about that workshop and we'll give people a link so they can get more information and sign up for it if they're interested. But tell us
Yeah,
how
so
that
it's a
works.
workshop that I created to help bring the assessments to life with the team. So everybody takes the assessment, and then I do a one-on-one debriefing with each person so they understand their personal results. And that's really important time because a lot of times, companies will bring assessments in and then they just give them a copy of the report. But it's better to have somebody guide you through the report and give you and help you interpret the information, or else we can start making judgment calls on certain things and you're like, no, that's not what that means. And really help them see some of the basic elements of the report. And then they come together as a team in the workshop and they get to understand a little bit more deeper each style and how we're all different, and then talk through what styles might challenge them, what styles might enhance them. And when they start having this conversation, it just opens up a whole new way of communicating with each other. So the assessments become the universal language that they can use. Like
Mm.
they can use things like, well, I'm fast paced, so I'm going to jump into this a little quicker. Or somebody might say, you're fast paced, Linda, so I need you to slow down a little bit to, help me get through this in a slower way. And you go, okay, you bring awareness to it. And so everybody starts having better communication because there's a whole communication element in there as well. How you prefer to communicate, what communication styles might be a little triggering. So how do you recover from that? How do you put things in place, mechanisms so that you're not reacting to it, but you can respond. So it has a lot of really great insight, not only for the individual, but for the team together to see how they enhance each other and how they can work better together by understanding what's similar about them and what's different about them.
And I assume this workshop is done in person, live, or
I've done it both ways. So in today's day and age, we have to be able to do both. So I've done it in person and I've done it online too. And both have been effective. It really is a matter of how much the team is willing to participate because it's very interactive. And I think that is what really makes it effective, is giving them the ability to communicate and share. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. We're talking about styles. We're not picking on people and judging people, but we're talking about styles. And so that makes it a little easier to have some of those uncomfortable conversations.
and how long does the workshop last if it's in person, for example, is it a couple days or
I've done it, no, not a couple days, because I don't think you can keep humans' attentions for that long. So I've done the workshop in 3.5 hours,
uh,
which is ideal because it really helps separate the concept. So I do a little overview of the different styles and reveal everybody's styles. They get to interact about that. And then we talk a little bit about communication and then what all of their styles look like as a team, because the assessment gives you the ability to plot everyone on a wheel that shows where everybody lands as far as their
mm,
styles go.
mm.
And so that gives you really good team insight and good conversation. Also, when you're hiring, are we hiring all the same people? Is everybody to the left of the wheel, or is everybody to the right of the wheel, or do you have a really balanced team? So it can give you some good insight there.
Yeah, that sounds great. I
Yeah,
would
it's
really
a
like
lot of
to.
fun. I mean, I get a kick out of, understanding people and how they tick.
Mm.
Sometimes it's not easy to see your own self. So having the report, the assessment is kind of like having a mirror. You get to hold up a mirror and see where, oh, I didn't realize that was a strength. because I just do it naturally,
Mhm.
but not everybody has that skill or that strength to be able to connect with people in a certain way or be analytical with information, or be a visionary where they can see the future and outline it, or be the executor. So these are all different styles that you need them all to make a company really be successful.
That's true, I'm sure. And even I would think if you're a one person company, it probably helps you to be able to understand the people that you're going to be working with as customers, clients, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when you start to get to know the different styles, you can kind of start to determine, but also you can ask certain questions, would you like me to give you more information or would you like, the highlighted version? And I would say, just give me the bullet points. Somebody that's the opposite of my style, somebody that's more of a high C, they might want all the details, do some research of their own. They're going to dig in
Mm,
and really analyze the information. So you can kind of get to that little bit of determination by asking the right questions and really paying attention to their style. But also, it's a good way to figure out where you might expend too much energy on something. So you might want to consider outsourcing it.
mm,
That would be a better use of your time because you could put your time towards other areas of your business that you can grow the business and, really expand it and not be mired in work that maybe wouldn't be the best use of your time. So usually it's accounting, right? If I had to do my own accounting, I probably would, I
mm.
don't know what would happen.
I,
It wouldn't
I
be
learned
good.
that on day one, starting my own business, is that I needed to hire somebody to do that because even though I spent 11 years in banking, I hated it. I hated the accounting end of it, and that was my first major in college was banking and finance, and I quickly moved on to several other majors and ended up with a
Yeah.
master's degree in theology, totally
Oh, wow.
totally opposite of what I started with. But I recognized that was not my. It's not that I couldn't do it; I just didn't enjoy doing it, and I
Exactly.
don't feel energized doing it. So,
Exactly. And that is exactly it, Linda. You can do anything you want,
mhm,
but are you energized by it? Are you depleted after you do it? Are you the best at doing that? And like how much joy is it bringing you? And
right,
we need more joy in our work.
absolutely. I feel have always felt bad for people who are in positions where they didn't have joy in their work because to me that's so important to really enjoy what you're doing, or I wouldn't still be doing it at the age of 83 if I didn't enjoy
Yeah,
it.
man, the data's not really looking good as far as people who are engaged at work, and it's like something like 32%
Wow.
that's engaged, and that's high.
My
That's too high, and that's where those motivators come into play and really understanding that piece of it, but also aligning your skill set with your position. So if you're in a position that you have to flex too much, you're going to be exhausted, and that's when burnout, fatigue, all mistakes are made. It's just not a good thing. So I really believe that we can continue to shift the workforce by aligning people with the right job and not just a job.
right. You've mentioned a couple words that I think seem to be the recurring themes in your work, and that's confidence and connection. Um, what are some practical steps that people can do to really lean into their confidence and connection?
Yeah, I think once you gain clarity around who you are, where your strengths are, do you have your core values identified? Do you have good boundaries in place that help you say no to certain things and yes to things that light you up? Confidence is taking action and really leaning into them and trying new things and figuring out ways that you can spend more time leaning into your strengths, getting more knowledge around that. If it's a certain skill set that you want to develop further, lean into all of those ways that can help you strengthen what you're naturally good at, and that builds confidence. And it really, a mindset shift is also important. When we don't say nice things to ourselves and we beat ourselves up because we're not good enough, that's chipping away at your confidence. And so finding ways to really be aware of how you talk to yourself. And whether you're saying it quietly or you're saying it out loud, it's programming your brain to just chip away at that confidence. And there's so much that goes into how you show up in the world and how you show up at work if you feel like you're confident in who you are. And connection is really kind of the last piece of it, which is making sure that you're connecting with other people. And when you understand that we're not all wired the same and you spend the time trying to understand that people are different and how can that enhance my life instead of just annoy me or trigger me, you can feel much more connected to other humans. And also find people that can be a mentor, or be someone that can help guide you in your work. And I think those things, and if you don't have someone, get a coach, right? Like get connected in some way, join an organization that an association, but we're way too isolated as humans that if we're not feeling connected with other people, that can also, have a negative effect. And so in this world of, we're working online and it makes it a little harder to have that connection. I want my clients to feel a lot more engaged by making the effort to be out and connect with other people. I think that's really important.
Do you think that people can actually change if they are told that they're too fast paced or not fast paced enough, for example? Can you actually change that?
Yeah, I think when you're aware, I don't think you can change someone to say you're now going to operate and be slow paced, but people can adapt. And I
Mhm.
think it's more about adapting than it is about
Right.
changing who you are.
Mhm.
Because then you're not going to be happy if you change who you are and you can't operate in your natural, then that's not a good place to be
Right.
either. But everybody has the ability to adapt.
Mhm.
And that's where that, work comes around, self-awareness, where you understand these are my weaknesses. And I might have to do something to, handle that weakness, or I might lean on a coworker who
Mhm.
can help me, but it can't always be I'm going to lean on other people
Right.
to adjust my weakness. I always use the 80-20 rule. 80% of your energy should be going into your strengths. 20% of the time, you need to be working on figuring out how you can mitigate your weaknesses.
Mhm.
But if it's flipped and you're spending 80% of your time trying to elevate a weakness, you're just wasting your time and energy, and it's just going to frustrate you. But I do believe people can adapt, people can change. Anything that is a strength, when it is overextended, and overextension comes from stress and fatigue,
Mhm.
it will become a weakness. So if I am someone like I'm a high I, so my influence is my gift. So I connect very well with people. I'm enthusiastic and optimistic. I'm a good negotiator because I want everybody to have a winning place in this. These are all things that are great in my work, right? Especially when I was in fundraising. But if I do it too much, I can be perceived as talkative and I'm not a good listener,
Mhm.
right? So anything that is a strength can become a weakness if you overextend it.
Mhm. That's a good point. Tell
Mhm.
me about the something else that you created, the 11-week micro change challenge. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. Well, to your point, can people change? Yes. Can you bring change into your life? Yes. It's hard. Change is difficult. And I believe that if you take it in tiny steps, micro changes, if you make small moves, small changes over time, they compound and they become big changes. But if you try to make huge swooping changes, the chances of them sticking or you succeeding are going to be much less. And so this micro change challenge is just designed to help people identify like what is it about your life that isn't where you want it to be or it's not serving you well, and then figuring out what the small changes are that you can do over time, and then kind of measure those results and journal about it and see how it's changing your life. And it doesn't feel so overwhelming. When you think about even just dieting, and somebody says you can't have any sugar, none, like that's going through a detox of sugar, right? How
Right.
about taper off? Instead of eating sugar every night after dinner, go down to 3 nights and then go down to 2 nights, right? So small changes and not huge too overbearing changes. So I believe that people can change if they want to change, they know what they want to change, and then they come up with the steps to make that change. They can do it over an extended period of time.
This has really been very, very helpful, I think, for a lot of people that think, well, that's just the way I am and I can't do anything about it, but maybe you can.
You can, yeah. Usually people who say that are, not truly, you know, self-aware with, how that's impacting other people around them. And then they're just not willing to make any changes. But we all have the ability to do that, if we want to. It
Yes.
has to start with you. It has to start with, the person wanting to make those changes and see the benefits. What's interesting about self-awareness, I did a little digging around, and 10 to 15% of people are truly self-aware. 95% believe they are.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
You're
And it might be
right.
because we're self-aware and we understand who we are, but
Mhm.
we have no self-awareness on how who we are and what we do impacts other people. So it's
Oh,
like the
right,
internal self-awareness, which is all about me. The
right,
external self-awareness is how I impact other people. You
right.
have to have both. It's like a bird can't fly with just one wing. So in order to be truly self-aware, you have to focus on both aspects of self-awareness.
And I would think maybe there's even a third wing of how other people affect me too. Is
Yeah,
how I
yeah,
affect other people, but how do they affect me? So a lot of self-awareness, I think, that we can all benefit from. And we're going to
yeah.
give people your website and are you, I assume you're on LinkedIn and
I'm on LinkedIn and I
LinkedIn.
have my website. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So we'll
And
definitely
on
get
your
all that.
website, we can find more about the power of knowing you and your team, and also the 11 weeks. That's less than a quarter of the year.
It is. Well, and there's no real science behind the 11 weeks. 11 is my favorite number, and
Oh,
it's a
okay.
power number, and it feels like it's doable, right? It's not saying 3 months or six
Right.
months. It's like 11 weeks. I can do that.
That sounds pretty easily doable, I would think, for most people.
Yeah.
Well, it's really been great having you on. Is there anything else that I missed asking you about that maybe
No,
you'd
you
like to
did
share with
great.
any
I feel like I got a good coverage of, the work that I'm doing and how important it is. And just really encouraging people, however they get to it, but really, understand who you are, because it starts with us. It starts with, really how we understand ourselves, how we treat ourselves, how we lean into our strengths. It starts there. And then surround yourself with really good people, and you'll have a lot of joy in your life.
And I know that Caroline has built some fantastic teams over the years, both in where she worked, even before she was a consultant and coach. But if you need a consultant or a coach to help your team be more productive, certainly I encourage you to look up Caroline, and she can work with you online or in person, as she said. And I think today teams are sometimes scattered all over the world. My team is. I have some people I work with are in India, so the time zone is the most challenging thing, but it's
Yeah,
also getting to know people's personalities and strengths and weaknesses too. So I
yeah.
encourage you all to contact Caroline, and I'm so glad you were able to join me. We had a little trouble finding a time that worked for both of us, but we finally landed on one. So I
We did.
encourage you to look up Caroline's website and learn more about what she does, and I know that she's going to be able to help you build your team and build yourself. So thanks
Yeah.
again, Caroline.
Thank you, Linda. I enjoyed our conversation.
Okay, bye.